Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Property Doctor podcast with me, your host, Dr Andrew Threadgold. This week, I'm talking to the business buyer, entrepreneur, and all-round decent fellow, James Gardner. James is a really nice guy. I've had a lovely run of quality people on the podcast over the past few weeks. James is no different. From someone that started off from very humble beginnings, went on to run and grow a multinational business to then exit and then start another group of his own, all within a people-centred arena. He's a very impressive fella, and some of the stuff that he talks about when it comes to looking after his staff and their mental well-being, and their business growth and his mindset is it's really impressive actually, and I'm privileged to know the guy. I'm privileged to learn from him, and I hope that you can see the value that I can see in him too. So without further ado, let's head over to the podcast. Many thanks. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Property Doctor podcast with me, your host, Dr Andrew Threadgold. This week, we continue our entrepreneurial theme with another entrepreneur's entrepreneur. Now, James Gardner is a business owner and a mentor and a multiple business buyer and a deal maker that I've had a lot of dealings with, and I've got an awful lot of respect for this chap. He comes with enormous credibility from building his own business to exiting and then buying into other businesses and building a group himself. So there's an awful lot of valuable lessons that I'm sure we'll uncover today whilst we talk to James. But first of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you, Andrew. It's great to be here.
Oh, wonderful. And I didn't big you up too much there, did I?
It sounded great. It sounded really nice. So yeah, no, thank you very much. I'll try and get my head out the door when I leave.
Fabulous. So I know your background, but correct me if I'm wrong. So you went to university and then came out of university quite early, and then ended up doing some manufacturing thing. Take me through a little bit about your background, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm now a proud university dropout. I probably wasn't that proud when I dropped out early days in my sort of late teens, early 20s. But I went to university to study business economics at the University of Hertfordshire, and it just wasn't for me. It was something that I tried, and I just wasn't academically bright enough, and it was just a real struggle. So I set one of my first goals, actually. I love setting goals. And one of my first goals was to, in 3 years' time, which was going to be the length of that degree course, was to be earning as much as I would have done as a graduate, but I would have had 3 years worth of work experience along the way, which my peers at university wouldn't have had. So that was my first goal that I set around the age of 19. And I'm very pleased to say that I achieved that first goal as well.
Can you remember what the income target was?
I think it was, I'm just going back now because it was probably how many years ago, 20 odd years ago or more. But it was something like, what would it have been? Around 20,000, maybe 21,000, something like that back in that day,
Right.
for a university graduate coming out of uni with, a standard university degree. And like I said, I always knew I wanted to be in business. Didn't quite know what business it was. So I studied business at college before university and did a GMVQ in business studies, which I really enjoyed. And I've always sort of been working. And I think that was installed in me from my parents and my grandparents. My grandparents, after the war, they ran a market garden sort of locally to where we are here in Kent. And my summer holidays was helping out around the garden centre and watering plants and planting up new seeds and picking fruit and veg and strawberries and things like that when it was in season, and helping Granddad with the customers. I can vividly remember, taking plants to the people's cars and different things like that. And just looking back now, it was an idyllic childhood. You don't realise at the time, you think that's just normal, but seeing how they interacted with people and it just sort of, it seemed like it was a nice, friendly business. They worked really hard was the reality of it, as most business owners do.
Yeah.
But it was a lifestyle business for them. They worked and lived there, and they made it their kind of life and legacy, really. But very proud and privileged to have that as my early years, and that stood me in good stead to want to earn some pocket money when I was little, and started out on my journey quite young doing that.
Yeah, fantastic. I think somebody said to me when I was, well, they said to my parents actually when I was 8, show me the child at 8 and I'll show you the man at 38, in terms of the work ethic, you know what I mean? And that's
It's really
always stuck with
interesting.
me because I, like you, when I was a kid, my dad used to send me off stonewalling with the local stonewalling guy. And then when I was 13, 14, he used to be director of HSS hire shops. So he'd have me going converting engines in generators from diesel to gas and things. And I just learned, and you just you just crack on, don't you? Just it's about having, that if you want something, you got to work for it, really. Um, so what was the job you were doing to earn your 20 odd grand back then?
So what I did is I kind of went full circle really. So one of my early days jobs, my second job, a part-time job, was on a weekend, was washing cars, and that was for a local business. It was a funeral director business in our local town, and I'd wash the hearse and limousine on a Saturday morning, and I became friends with the owner. And over those period of years, from about the age of 14 when I started doing that, all the way through to sort of university, when I actually turned around to him and said, could I leave university and come and work for you full time and learn to be a funeral director? And he said yes, and we started on that journey together. And that role there quickly became apparent that I wasn't really going to be able to grow anywhere within that business. It was a small family run business. My name wasn't above the door. There was a general manager who'd been here for a number of years, and I was just learning my trade, but I was a young man and an ambitious young man at that. So after about a year or so, I left that role because I wanted to do more and try more. And the grass is always greener when you're in your early 20s and you think, that there's more out there for you. So I wanted to explore that. And I went up to London for a couple of years. I worked for HSBC Bank for a year, and then Connex Southeastern, the train company, in their HR department for a year as well. And at the end of that second year, my eldest brother, I've got two brothers, my eldest brother contacted me to say, I think I want to start a business, which was what he was doing in the manufacturing world, in plastic manufacturing. But he didn't want to leave that role at the time. He was married with two young boys, and it was quite a risky move for him to do that. But I was young and footloose and fancy free, and could take that risk. Back in those days, you could quite easily get another job, if it didn't work out. And 20 odd years later, we'd grown that business from my sister-in-law's dressing table all the way through to a multinational business with our business here in Kent. We had a site here in Kent as well as in the USA as well. We set up our own business in America, in St. Louis, Missouri, and grown that to a point where a large American company wanted to acquire us, but also keep us on board as well, which is what happened.
Wow. Okay. And was you being on board part of the deferred consideration? Was that how that worked?
It was, yeah. There was
An
we've
earn out
done
almost.
it slightly differently. So there was a lump sum on day one, which is what we both wanted. We weren't really ready to sell. I think we arrogantly told them that they couldn't afford us, and that kind of thing. So the price was very high, and one of the conditions was that every team member, every member of staff across both sides of the pond got to stay on and keep their jobs if they wanted it, which they agreed to. And they also wanted us as well to stay on. There wasn't anything contractual about that. It was a gentleman's agreement. And my brother stayed on for about 4 or 5 years, and he retired at the grand old age of 52, and is still retired now. And I meet up with him regularly, and still have a great relationship with him. And I then took over as MD of that business and ran that for about 3 years until I started my own acquisition journey.
Wow. That's amazing. That multinational as well. I mean, there must have been an awful lot of growing pains with that, which we'll come on to later on. I want to segue into that in a bit, but let's go full circle then, so that the listeners can hear how that we can complete the circle. So when you started your acquisition journey, what happened?
So yeah, I kind of had got to a midlife crisis point. I think I turned 40, and I just thought, do I want to work for another company? They were really great, still are a really great company, but do I want to work for them for another 25 years, get a gold watch and a nice pension, or do I roll the dice and try and do something else again? And I was just thinking about what it was that I could do. I really didn't want to start my own business again from scratch, just because of how difficult that had been in the early days for us doing that. and how long it had taken to get to a point where it was, paying for itself and being able to take on people to help and things like that. So I was looking about other options, and then I stumbled across one of your other podcast guests as well, Jonathan J, and read his book and listened to his podcast. And then a very fateful thing happened. On the 31st of August 2019, he was running a competition for 4 people to win a seat on a private jet trip over to Europe and back in a day to hear him speak at an event in Europe. And I was one of the lucky 4 to be able to spend the day with him and the other guys, to be able to ask him any question we wanted to. We spent the day together. It was great fun. First and last time I've been on a private jet.
It's the only way he travels, I believe.
That's right, yeah. I remember a little segue. I remember coming back from that, and the next time was on a Ryanair flight to France, and it wasn't quite the same. But a lovely experience. And again, the whole day just asking questions and hearing what the other guys were asking as well and his answers. So I came back from that trip and was just so inspired to do something. And then just spent the next sort of 6 weeks really thinking around what business did I want to acquire. And I didn't want to do certain sectors because that wasn't really my thing. I didn't want to do the manufacturing sector because I'd done that. And I thought, I want to challenge myself here a bit as well. I didn't want it to be that easy. And then a phrase kept coming back to me. The phrase was, there's 2 certainties in life, which is death and taxes. And I didn't know much about taxes apart from paying a load, but I did know about death and the funeral profession from my early days of washing the cars all the way through to being a trainee funeral director after leaving university. So off the back of that, I came back and I contacted my friend who I used to work for and said, can we have a catch up and a coffee? And that was in mid-October 2019. So he agreed, and I came round for a cup of tea and a coffee, catch up, and we had a conversation. And I was in the back of my mind just waiting for the last question that I was going to ask him. And that, sorry, excuse me, that question was, I was 62 at the time. Sorry.
All right.
He was 62 at the time, and I said, I'm not sure if you're ready to retire or not. I don't think you've got a succession plan in place. But whenever you're ready to sell the business, would you give me first refusal on buying the business? And he turned around there and then and said, I think I'm ready now.
Wow.
So a real serendipitous moment, being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. And so I believe that from that point, there was a deal struck where you acquired the business, took it over, and then since then, have you just run that one, or have you acquired other funeral directors, or how has the process evolved since then?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So because that deal sort of just went so well, and we were able to sort of come on board and work with the team that was there at the time to grow that and to do some other things that the team members wanted to do as well. We wanted to continue that journey, and one of the things that I said I'd never do, we did, which was to open up a new shop and a new business. It was a sister business to the first one, the first acquisition in a town just along from us, and kind of you grow geographically with funeral directors. So we did that, one, to grow the market share that we had, but also to protect other people coming into that area. And that was during lockdown, so that was an interesting time as well. And that's kind of a 10-year project really before it will start to pay for itself. And that's why buying businesses is so much easier and better than starting from scratch. Yeah. So we've done that. We've also bought other funeral directors as well, and grown our presence in the funeral world by doing that, which has been great, and to take on new team members and to help in other areas and help families in other areas of the country as well has been fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. Really inspiring stuff, actually, because as someone that's under your tutelage, trying to do the same, it can be very, very challenging. As you know, I mean, recently I've been in a little bit of a funk about it because a few of the things that I've been doing have turned to be very, very difficult to try and progress. And when you've invested so much mental energy and physical efforts to travel to places, I mean, we're told not to travel to meet people. They're supposed to come and meet us. But sometimes when you're trying to do something, you can invest so much mental energy into it. And for someone like myself, I've been through an awful lot of trouble, difficulty in my life, but I've always, whatever I've turned my mind to, I've always managed to get sorted out. Um, and when I look back, it feels like it's probably easy, but I'm sure it wasn't at the time. But when you put a lot of effort into something and it doesn't happen, and then you've got to go again and then again and again, it's really difficult. So on the mindset thing, I mean, you're not superhuman, even though you've done amazing things. What's your stance on this then? Because you must have been through some difficult moments.
Absolutely, and the reality is that everybody has, for one degree or another. And being an entrepreneur, being a deal maker in terms of acquiring businesses, you're kind of pushing yourself more than the average Joe in terms of putting yourself out there and testing your mindset and your mental health as well at the same time. And I guess it's about preparation for me. It's about preparing my mind and my mindset and my mental health. They start calling it mental fitness as well, which is another sort of play on words. And I think it's interesting because we've all got physical fitness, and if you want to get fitter, you'll go to the gym and you'll work out, or you'll start walking or running or cycling or whatever else it might be. So the mental fitness word isn't a bad one. I think it's okay. And there's ways of improving that. There's ways of improving through breathing exercises, through meditation. And again, it's interesting. Looking back sometimes isn't a bad thing to do. I have this phrase, and it says that I'm better than I was 6 months ago, but not as good as I'm going to be in 6 months' time. And that just keeps you learning and growing and developing. So through reading lots of books and listening to books in the car, podcasts now such as this one here as well, and others where you can just hear what other people have been through as well, to be able to see what they've overcome. And it's interesting that all, not even some, but all of the successful or wealthy people in the world have all had to overcome different things and continue to do that as well. So even though we see potentially their Instagram page of all looking nice and shiny, the reality is that that's not true all the time. And they'll tell you about that in their autobiographies and their stories. So I've taken great strength in learning from others. I'm the youngest brother of three. I've got two older brothers who are 10 and 12 years older, so there's quite an age gap. And that's really stood me in good stead. As a family growing up, we didn't have much money. Mum and dad worked really hard, but I didn't necessarily know that we didn't have much money because we had so much love, and that continues to this day. And that has been a real solid foundation for me, especially later on in my life, to realize how important that is. And we're trying to impart that now onto our children as well, to be able to show them that you can get through things. So we talk about it a lot. Communication is so important in life, and in business as well. And I just, again, I'm better than I was 6 months ago. I'm better than I was 6 years ago. I'm better than I was 20, 30 years ago. But I want to continue to work on it. I'll never get there. It's a constant work in progress. And I enjoy that as well. And now I'm privileged to be able to look after people in our team. So part of what we do here is that we have a wellness program that we've signed up for, where we physically all go to a workshop every other month, and we also have a live one-to-one coaching counselling session once a month, every other month as well, for our team members, because of how important that is. There's, again, different levels of mental health and depression and anxiety, and it's just everywhere. But because there's still a stigma around it, it's getting a lot better. People tend not to talk about it. So we're really open with it. And we say that, everybody should have at least once a year a physical and a mental health check. We take our cars to be serviced and MOT once a year, but we don't do that for ourselves, which is just crazy. So we're really passionate about that. We put our money and our actions and our time for people to have that time off during work to be able to do that. And it's just fantastic what's happening within our own team doing that as well. And I hope other companies start to do that.
That's really impressive, actually. I've never heard of anybody doing something quite so person-centered within a business as, I mean, maybe once a year, but certainly not as frequently as that. I mean, in medicine, that's absolutely massively lacking that kind of thing. You just expected, there's a whole culture of put up and shut up, stiff upper lip and just crack on and accept whatever workload you get thrown at you. Whereas there should be something like that, really. And I think it's starting to come in, but it's certainly not anything to that level. And that's really forward thinking, I think. So when it comes to things like stress, for example, because mental health, mindset, there's the parallels really, and when you can be under a significant amount of stress, it manifests itself physically. So some people actually can physically feel when they're stressed. It might be that you're struggling to meet payroll, or it might be that you need money for the business, some capex, and you don't know where it's coming from, or something like that. Have you ever been in that position where that you've been stressed?
Yes, yeah, and again, that's where the learning takes place. So for me, my Achilles heel is my larynx, so I would get laryngitis if I'm starting to be run down or feel run down.
Right.
But more than that, when in those moments of extreme stress, and I can think back to those, and that one of the acquisitions we were doing, there was a week of it, and it was just around funding. So it was around finances, and it was around the smallest part of the funding in this whole deal. And it was, again, that lack of communication, and the goalposts kept moving for what they were trying to do and accomplish. And we'd give them all the information they wanted. Then they wanted even more, and we've already had it. And it was getting to the point where the deal was going to collapse unless this happened by Friday or whatever it was. And I was pacing for the first time in my life. And I was just remembering, just again, that feeling of stress on your body, which is just not good, not pleasant, and not good as well. And I've had that a few times since. And again, it's around people, and it's around finances typically for me. I'm sure it's other things for other people, but trying to look after our team, and the families that we're privileged to look after as well, and then again paying for all of that as well whilst we're going through all that process. But
have you got any learning points from how you manage that then? Is there anything that you do that you might be able to share that other people might try to help them through those times where you overthink and you can feel that, that you lie awake at night and you just can't get it out of your head, and you catastrophize, and, all the stuff that I'm sure we all do, but most people, certainly like some business leaders I know, would never admit to it.
yeah,
But they must do. Do you know what I mean?
they must do, yeah. And any business, has always got its challenges. There's a quote by John C. Maxwell, one of the great authors in leadership, and he says, "As a leader, you never get 2 good days in a row. So if you're getting a good day, enjoy that one, because something will happen tomorrow." And you know what? It's not far from the truth. So what I do with that, and again, I'm still learning this process, but the things I've learned and the things that I've implemented that I'm happy to share is, again, it's around physical and mental health. So and again, it catches me out, because when I get busy and stressed, I stop doing this thing that I know helps.
Right.
So that thing is to go to the gym, and I'm an early bird, so I'll go to the gym 6 o'clock in the morning when it opens. I'll do a half-hour workout in the gym, something cardio probably for me, and then the more important part is I'll do a half-hour sort of mindfulness workout in the spa area, in the hot tub area. And part of that process is breathing meditation. Right. So I do 5 rounds of they call it box breathing. So I breathe in for 5, hold for 5, breathe out for 5, and then hold for 5. And I do that 5 times. And then after that, I do 3 rounds of 7-11 breathing, which is breathing in for 7 seconds and breathing out for 11 seconds, not holding in between. And those 2 things really just help to calm me down. I then just prepare the day in my mind, manifest different things that I'm thinking of as well, and just processing things that have either happened or that might happen during that day. So there's some practical things that I do on a regular basis to be able to help both physically and mentally prepare for the day. And as I'm getting a little bit older and a little bit wiser, it's just around taking your time more. As a younger man, I'd have been very quick to make decisions, and maybe they would have been right, maybe they wouldn't have been. But now it's just, letting the moon go around the earth one more time or something, sleeping on it, and just biding your time a little bit more to be able to make some of those tough decisions as well. And sharing those tough decisions with trusted people. So one of the things that we've done within our businesses is to form a senior leadership team. and really proud to promote people within the business into those positions and to help and train and develop them as leaders as well. And just gradually adding to their list of responsibilities and utilizing their knowledge as well to be able to share some of the things that I'm going through. And the old adage of a problem shared is a problem halved, and it does help. And it just gets that team sort of bonding even more.
Brilliant. Yeah. Do you find there's a couple of things in that, really? One is I'd love to know some book recommendations, but we'll come back to that. But the other question that really sprang to my mind was journaling. Do you think journaling helps?
Yeah, massively. Yeah. And again, it's one of those things that I know works, I know helps.
Does it? Right, because I
And
don't
it's one of
journal,
the, it's one of the things that I sometimes drop, because I'm just too busy. So often when there's a problem, I kind of try and tackle it head on and try and just get on top of it. And again, I know when I'm not in that crisis moment that just still going to the gym and doing those things, journaling, writing your goals down every day is something else I used to do. And even short-term goals and long-term goals, and just writing them out and journaling and writing is so sort of therapeutic and helpful as well. One of the things that I've done, again, I don't do this as often as I should, is called thinking time. And it's just taking yourself away somewhere quiet with a pad and a pen and just writing down what's on your mind. It's not a to-do list, it's just thinking about the future, where you might want to be, different ideas and plans. And it's just so, amazing for clearing the mind and helping you to focus on the future as well. So all of those different things, skills that I've learned through books I've read, or recommendations from people that I've heard, or mentors that I've had as well. And we were talking about mentorship earlier, and that again is just been so valuable to me. Some mastermind groups. I've been a Vistage member for a number of years, and that group of peers and other people around me that have gone through those same experiences. It's really helpful and healthy to know you're not the only one going through and experiencing those issues. And then also to have people around you, trusted people that can advise you on what they've done or what they would do in that situation. So mastermind groups, mentorship and coaching, just vital to growth, and also keeping you grounded and keeping you, in a good position coming forward.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, so in terms of books, one, I mean, there's so many brilliant books out there. Some people like one, some people, it's a personal taste, but there are some real mindset kind of stories. I mean, have you heard of David Goggins? Have you heard of, from an amazingly terrible childhood through all sorts of trials and tribulations and into an elite athlete? I mean, what a story that is. I mean, there's loads like that, and the depths of their mind power is fascinating when you start delving into them. What your favorite books?
Yeah, again, I think that's called You Can't Hurt Me or something like that by Goggins. And it's an interesting read or listen to. Again, don't have young children around when you listen to it. But it's, again, I love those kind of special forces books. So the Ant Middleton ones and Ollie Ollerton. I was really proud to share a stage speaking with Ollie Ollerton just last month, which was fantastic. And his mindset and mental health approach as well. Those guys and girls that are in the special forces across the world that are telling those stories from the Navy SEALs training or SAS selection and things like that. What's fascinating is they're not superhuman. They're the same as us. They're not made any different, yet they can do what we perceive as superhuman things. And again, a lot of it is your mind protecting you and saying, stop running, stop doing that thing, stop climbing that mountain, whatever that might be. And they push through that barrier. And they know when to turn it on and when to turn it off, and they can do it in a split second as well. So learning from those sort of people. So Ant Middleton has a book called The Fear Bubble, and he was talking it in sort of war terminology about creating a bubble. He's got to go into that door and see what is in the other side of that door, and whether he has to clear the room or protect the people that are in that room. He said, there's no point getting worried about it until I'm in that situation. So this bubble is something that we go into and then we come out of. Now, most people, myself included, would worry along the way to the bubble. And you'd worry the night before.
Yeah.
but you're in a safe environment the night before. You're safely tucked up in bed. No need to worry about that. It's only when you actually have to do that action or make that speech or talk to that member of your team or whatever else it might be. So it's about controlling your mind to protect it. And we're trying to do something here that for millennia hasn't been the case. You know, people call it the lizard brain or the caveman brain, whatever else it might be. We still think there's a saber-toothed tiger outside the door, which we know there isn't, but we still think there is.
Well,
And
I live in Middlesbrough, there might be.
So it's about sort of working around that and training yourself. And just like physical training, you don't go from being an average Joe to Arnold Schwarzenegger overnight. It's years and years and years of practice and training and honing and developing. And it's the same with your mental health, but it's got to start somewhere. So whether that's a breathing exercise or a meditation or reading a book or listening to a podcast, whatever it might be, getting a mentor is fantastic. You can gain years and years and years of knowledge and experience, you know, in a very short period of time. Yeah. And you think about the most elite athletes and the sports people that we know and love and look up to. All of those have got multiple coaches and mentors. Yet in the business world, it's almost seen or has been seen as either an elite thing for CEOs only, or you're in trouble if you're with somebody who's training and developing you. And that's just wrong. So we're trying to make all of that different within our own businesses as well. And again, I'm personally doing that and being coached and mentored myself to be able to coach and mentor others as well.
Yeah, I think coaching and mentoring all through, I mean, that is one thing that is in medicine. You get mentored all the way through, to the point, you know, I've mentored junior doctors now for the best part of 15 years. And through what we've done in property, I have people that ask all the time, but really I'm too busy trying to achieve at this moment in time. But it's not to say I won't try to do that, but I have mentors. You are one of them. I've got others. I'm sure you have mentors. I'm sure everybody that's doing something that other people perceive is unusual has a mentor to help them, because you can shortcut things by leveraging people's experience. Well, that's the way I think anyway. I mean, you know, people, my junior doctors might come to me with a problem that they think is particularly challenging, but you know, when you've been around a while, you might have seen it 50 times in the last year. Do you know what I mean? So that's the whole beauty of it, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think I said to you, and I've said to everybody else that I work with, you know, and it's a real privilege to work with you and the other guys and girls that I do, is that it's kind of mentoring and coaching. So, and there is a difference. So coaching is kind of drawing out what people already know and just helping them to make those connections even stronger in their brain, really, about, I know you know this, so come on, you tell me. Mentoring is, I know that you don't know this yet because you haven't learned it. And I'm just going to give you the shortcut to it to speed it up for you. Then you make that learning, because then you go off and do it yourself. And during calls and meetings I have, we flip in between mentoring and coaching all the time, because people are different and have different knowledge and backgrounds as well. But you're right, it's about a fast track way of doing it. I'm a great believer in failing. I love failing. I fail often. I try and fail fast. I encourage my team to fail. Nobody gets in trouble for failing within my businesses, because it's how we learn and how we learn the most. We learn very little from our successes in this world, but we learn so much, if we're willing to, from our failures. And I'm a big failure. I'm a massive failure. And I keep going forward and I keep learning from those failures. And what I don't want to do is to, you know, see somebody else that I know and that I'm working with fail in the same way. So it's like, I would suggest you didn't do this because this happened to me. You can if you want to, but let me just say that there is a, you know, potential pitfall over there, and you don't have to go through it if you don't want to. So learn from my failures so that you can get there quicker. And also, I want people to be better than me. I don't want to be the restriction. I don't think I'm it. I know I'm not. I know that other people, especially younger people coming up, we were talking about a couple that just before we started recording, I want them to do much more than I've ever done in my life. And I'm really proud and, you know, playing a small part in their life and then in their acquisition journey as well. And that's really, really, you know, encouraging and inspiring for me to be able to do that for others as well.
Yeah, there's a saying, I'm probably paraphrasing incorrectly, but you only ever fail if you stop. So if one failure you give up, then you do fail. But if you just keep learning and going, then you can't fail. You just keep going until you get to, I think that's a Grant Cardone one, maybe, I don't know.
Could be Mr. 10X.
Mr.
So
10X, 10X
yeah.
himself. Yeah. Well,
So,
his marketing clearly works, doesn't
yeah,
it?
it does. So no, I think he's doing all right for himself.
I think so. I'd like to be
But
20 quid behind him.
it's great. Again, a book recommendation. We're going to get onto some of those, but another one is by John C. Maxwell, who we've already spoken about, and he wrote a book called "Sometimes You Win and Sometimes You Learn." And again, so many valuable lessons that he's taken from his own life and other people around him as well. And it's having that mindset. There's an old phrase that says, "Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose." You can't lose. You can lose. Sorry, you can, if you don't take those learning opportunities of what other people might call failures and don't act upon them, and then it stops you going through that. And we do see that in life. I've seen that in people. I've seen that people that have been knocked down, or they've stumbled, or they've failed at something, and it stopped them from ever trying again. And I think that's a real shame. So, I want to encourage people to try more and to fail more and to learn from those failures and then go forward. Life, and especially entrepreneurial life, isn't a straight line from the bottom left corner to the top right corner of a graph. It always does this, and that's fine to do that, because you're learning in those dips, and then you're in the highs, and then it's going to come down again, and you're learning again. But you're always moving upwards in a learning trajectory up to the top right corner of the graph.
Yeah, a big thing that actually a life lesson that I learned a very hard way was, don't be a victim. So there's a lot of people, it might be a natural thing where we take the role of the victim in any situation. Somebody has done this to me, this has happened to me, and that's like a default setting for many of us, and there's nothing wrong with that. But your life changes when you actually flip that and realize, actually, this happened because of me, and you take ownership of the situation. So regular listeners of my podcast know that one of the reasons I ended up going on an entrepreneurial journey is because I got referred to the GMC over a cremation form. And whilst I still maintain that I did what I did with a good heart to help somebody out, and at the time I thought, he's done me wrong because he's referred me. Actually, it was me to blame for getting referred in the first place. So once you take ownership of situations, your worldview changes dramatically. Do you agree with that kind of?
100%. So there's two things there. One, there's a great book called Sumo, SUMO, by Paul McGee, and the Sumo stands for Shut Up, Move On. And there's some fantastic, really easy, simple learnings in life. So that's a great one to look up for your readers as well. And the other one is just so simple. And I won't do this at you, but if I do this, if I'm pointing the finger at somebody else, there's 4 pointing back at me. So it's always my fault. It's not that person's fault. Now, managers will point the finger. They'll point them down and say, it was your fault. You should have done this, that, and the other. And leaders don't do that. They say, I'm sorry that happened. It's my fault because I didn't give you the training, the resources, all the skills that you needed to be able to make those decisions. But well done for trying. What have we learned, and how can we move forward? And I'm that type of a person, and I've learned that I've not always been that type of a person. Me in my early 20s would have been it's your fault. And through learning and developing and getting it wrong and upsetting people and making wrong decisions, that's the things I regret in one respect, but I've learned how not to continue to do that. And a simple thing, if you're pointing the finger, whether it's physically or metaphorically, just remember there's 4 pointing back at you, and take that on board and protect your team around you. If you're in a position of leadership, it's a privilege to be there. So don't abuse that privilege at all, and help others to get there as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And like I say, it was a massive. My world has changed massively when my mindset. I didn't know I was a victim. I didn't know I had a victim mentality, but I certainly now I do not. I know that. And my world has changed immeasurably since I consciously made that change. And you just look at every situation differently. Thinking about books, and you mentioned the lizard brain a bit earlier on. Have you read The Chimp Paradox?
Yeah, Dr. Steve Peters,
Yeah,
or Sir Steve Peters now, fantastic book. Very, again, simple understanding chimp brain, computer brain, and human brain,
that's it.
and how they're reacting at different speeds. And again, that's partly what I've done over the years. I've programmed my computer brain so it reacts quicker than the chimp brain. The chimp brain's still there, it doesn't go away. And even just this week, we've had a new starter within one of our businesses. She's coming with some fantastic new ideas of how we can improve our business. And because I've been programming my computer brain over the years to say, I want those new ideas, I want to listen, it stopped me from saying, no, we always do it that way. And that's what someone said to me 20 odd years ago when I worked up in London. And I didn't want to be that type of manager. I wanted to be different, but it was still there. Even in the conversation this week, it didn't come out. What came out was, that's a fantastic idea. Let's look into that. Can you find out some more information? Can you send me some links on it? Let's do that. Let's order those things. That's what came out, because that's what the computer brain has programmed in there, but only because I've been working on it for so long.
Yeah.
And so again, it's a wonderful story. I've shared it with other people and other leaders as well. And he's trained the British cycling team to win gold medals.
Yeah.
Ronnie O'Sullivan in his snooker career, and you can see the difference between early Ronnie O'Sullivan and later Ronnie O'Sullivan. And if he can do that with a person like that, there's hope for everyone that we can improve by reading a book or listening to it on Audible. He's even got a TED talk about it as well. So it's a fantastic story. Keep it simple, explain it to others, learn it, practice it, and see how much you improve.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you read it, well, if you listen to it, because I don't listen to the radio anymore. In the car, I've only got audiobooks on, and he reads it himself, and he's a Teesside lad. He's from Middlesbrough originally. So I didn't know that, but when it first came on and I could hear the Teesside accent, I thought, who's this guy? It's brilliant.
He has got a funny accent, is what you're saying, Andrew, and that's correct for us Southerners. And
absolutely.
But again, I love audiobooks when people read it themselves. And again, I don't listen to the radio. The only exception to that, if the kids are in the car and they don't want to listen to my audiobooks that I'm listening to, or podcasts, so then a radio or one of their music things will come on. But I've turned my car into a mobile library. Yeah. And actually, I look forward to long journeys now, because it means I can get to listen to more things. I even look forward to a traffic jam because I can get to listen to more of whatever I'm listening to.
Yeah, it's one of the best things you can ever do, because imagine how much knowledge you're gaining in your commute time, rather than listening to the media or whatever telling you about the latest bad news. Or I mean, my friends actually don't believe me that I don't know what's going on in the news, because I don't watch it. It's of no significance to me. All I'm bothered about is learning and improving. And again, that's another shift. Speaking of good books, Green Lights. Have you listened to that?
Matthew McConaughey. Yeah, that's an interesting one to listen to, because he's an actor.
Yes.
All of a sudden, you'll be going along and he'll shout out something. I won't do it in case somebody's listening whilst they're driving now. But it scared me so many times whilst I was driving. Yeah. It's a good one
bumper
to listen
sticker.
To. Yes, bumper sticker. That's right. And it's really fascinating. What I love about Green Lights, and this isn't giving it away, so go and buy it and listen to it. And well, actually, there was a journal I bought from the back of that as well, which I used until I filled it up. Was at the end of that book, towards the end, he talked about how he came up with this kind of he turned 50 and it was his halfway autobiography. And what he did was to research himself. So he went up in his attic, in his loft, and got out boxes of things that he had collected over the years, old beer mats and napkins and things that he'd written down. And what I loved about it was he was writing his goals down. And one of those goals he'd written down way before he was successful in any acting or films or TV was to win the best male actor at the Oscars. And he went on to win that, very prestigious and very, the odds of winning that are so small. But because he'd written it down so many years ago, it starts to manifest something, and you send something out into the universe to say, that's what I want to do. And he went on to do that, along with lots of other of his goals as well. So Green Lights is a great story, because he's had a really interesting upbringing. He was in Australia for a number of years, parents and brothers, and oh my goodness, all
funny old relationship his family have. Yeah,
absolutely. So we can learn from all of those things as well, and very different from my upbringing in my world, but fascinating to listen isn't he?
Yeah, it's a strong recommendation from me, but you've got to listen to it, not read it, because the performance is fabulous.
Yeah.
And so I think just coming on to the last part of our chat here, it sets up nicely for goal setting. So we've mentioned setting goals quite a few times. I'm quite new to it. I've only done it for the past 4 or 5 years, really. And it seems to, the act of writing something down, even if you share it with somebody else or not, seems to form a contract between you and yourself that ends up growing legs and things start to happen. What are your thoughts on goal setting? Are they useful to you? Anything you can share with us that you might have in terms of your own goals? Anything?
Absolutely, that's a lovely way of describing it, and I've come up with my own concept. I call it amazing 3D goals. So there's an old-fashioned SMART goals, SMART, which some of your listeners will know about and have set themselves, as I did over the years. But I was sitting in a French house that we'd hired for our summer holiday about 7 years ago now. And the kids were asleep, and I was working at the table, catching up on some emails and listening to some YouTube clips. And the great Jim Rohn was talking about goal setting, and he described it so simply. I thought, that's really fascinating. Let me start to do that as well. And one of those goals was to own our own French house, because we love going on holiday to France, and to really describe it well. So the amazing 3D goals in a nutshell is, what's your dreams or your desire? What is it that you want in life? And everybody's got a dream. The second D is to describe it or to define it so well that anybody would understand it. If you can make the hairs on the back of the neck of somebody else that you're talking to stand up, then you're doing really well in that description. And the third D is really important. The most important one is a target date or a deadline as to when you want to accomplish that by. If you don't put that date on it, it just remains a dream and doesn't turn it into an amazing 3D goal. And all of those things combined, just in a simple format. I teach this in schools. I'm actually teaching it on Monday in the local school here again, which I love doing, really giving back to the local community. And just as a side note there, one of my goals, after making a long list of goals, was to share this amazing 3D goal story with my school, my college, and my university. And I did that as part of that, contacted them, and I've shared it with them and other schools now. And it's really gone full circle. So I left the University of Hertfordshire after a term and dropped out. I'm now a visiting lecturer for the University of Hertfordshire, talking to their MBA graduates, students, about goal setting and entrepreneurship and things like that, which is just brilliant. So I love that. So goal setting is just vitally important. Set goals for what you want to do and what you want to achieve, and put as many down as you want. I've got over 200 goals that I'm working towards. I've completed over 100. I've got a 200-year goal in the future that I'm working towards as well, that I'll never see, but it's there just to keep me focused in the distant future as well. And all of those things combined is just, for me, I'm really passionate about goal setting and teaching others the same thing.
Fantastic. That's absolutely amazing. So, and when did you start goal setting?
So it started then in about 7 years ago.
Right.
Like I said, since then I've gone back and actually thought, well, it started when I left, university, but it wasn't called Amazing 3D Goals then. It was only then looking back sometimes that you think that was a goal, that was a goal, that was a goal. One of the goals that we had, again, to buy that French house, we've now done, and we bought our French house about 4 years ago next month, and we'll be back there hopefully in August as well again, which we absolutely love. Another one, and the fascinating thing about goal setting is, one of the businesses we acquired, a funeral director businesses, that was one of the goals on the list. And often when you set goals and you put that date by it, often they happen sooner than the date or the deadline you've put. And this one happened. So the goal was to buy this business by, and again, a lot of them are the day before my birthday, because I want to accomplish something before I turn another year older. And we ended up, so my birthday's in February, we actually ended up buying this business in December. And on a weekly basis, I'll just review my goals just to see what's happened and how many I can tick off. I knew that one was on there because I've been focusing so hard on buying the business. But what I had forgotten was that I'd also written down further down the list that I wanted to own another hearse and limousine as part of our businesses. And that business came with a hearse and limousine. So I thought, oh, fantastic, tick another 2 goals off. And I was scanning further down the list, And one of them said, I want to own a 2-bedroom house or apartment that I can rent out to happy tenants. That was the goal. I put happy in there as well because I don't want miserable tenants. And as part of that acquisition, we then acquired 2 properties as part of that acquisition as well. And as part of that acquisition, there was a 2-bedroom apartment that was already let out to 2 very happy tenants, and there still are tenants now to this day. Wow. And I'd forgotten it was even on the list because it was so far down. So setting goals, putting things out there into the universe to say, this is what I want to do, and then just keeping a note of it. Whenever you complete a goal, you must add at least one on as well, or more per goal you complete. Otherwise, you get to the end of the list and you think you've completed it and you haven't.
Yeah. It's almost speak it into existence. That's the whole manifesting type thing, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And another great book called Manifest as well. So which I just read recently.
Yeah. So if there's one message you would give to somebody that if somebody's listening that's catching this and they may be a bit doubtful about their future, they may have big doubts about their ability to do something, or if there was one thing you could say to somebody, if you could grab hold of them and say, look, I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what would you say to anybody if you were in their ears for a minute or so?
Yeah, I think for me, we're in a really privileged position, looking after families in their hour of need in the funeral profession that we're in. And one of the only good things about doing that is we're reminded every single day, literally, how short life is. So I would say to somebody, just remember that nobody's going to live forever. You were all on this planet for a very short period of time. It's all risky. Whatever you do is risky. None of us get out alive. That's how risky it is. So try something. Work on yourself, better yourself, learn, grow, develop. Surround yourself with people that are better than you. Stand on the shoulders of giants if you have to, whether that's through books or actually physical groups or anybody else that you can get around. And that quote of, all men and women die, only a few truly live. Be one of those that truly live. Look back on your days and think, great, I did something with that. I've left this planet a better place than when I entered it. And I think if you have that mentality, surround yourself with great people. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So choose wisely. Who are you spending the most time with? Are they lifting you up or are they bringing you down? And you can move, you can change. You're not a tree. You can do something different with your life. You can move jobs, you can move locations, and you can be a better version of yourself, and constantly work at that, constantly try and be better, and get help from people around you that will want to help you do that as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, you remind me of the Stoics. Worse things happen in the mind than they actually do in reality. 100%. That's kind of absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much. So if people want to find you or get in contact with you, how can they do it best?
Best place is probably on LinkedIn. So find me, James Gardner, on LinkedIn, and really happy to have messages through there, or send me emails through that way as well, whatever works best for you. But that's the best place to find me.
Fantastic. And I'll put a little link to your LinkedIn in the blurb underneath the podcast. So it's been absolutely amazing. Thank you very much for your time, James. It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andrew. It's been great.